The year is 2007, and I got a Nintendo Wii for Christmas with two games, Wii Sports and Spider-Man Friend or Foe. Wii Sports blew me away with its unique motion controls, and the games were really fun, especially with family and friends. Spider-Man Friend or Foe got my attention for one reason and one reason only. It was Spider-Man. So the more I think about it, the more I realize I have this game to thank for turning me into the gamer that I am today. Sure, I had a PlayStation 1 before this, but to my knowledge, the PlayStation 1 only had racing games. I was 6, and I got kind of bored of those. It didn't take much longer to realize that there were also these other awesome games out there, like Super Mario Galaxy, which is probably one of my favorite games of all time. But right now we're talking about Spider-Man Friend or Foe. And looking back at the game today, it's pretty mediocre at best. Spider-Man Friend or Foe is a game that you play co-op with one other friend. If you're playing alone, the CPU will take over as the second player, and the second player is usually an old enemy of Spider-Man. I'm talking Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Sandman, and this was set in time before Activision was selling loot boxes and Call of Duty. So all the characters you earn through real game progression, none of this DLC bullshit. At the end of each world, I guess we'll call it, there is a final boss, and the final boss is always one of Spider-Man's main villains. But something's kinda off about them. It turns out each one of them is mind controlled, so you beat them in the fight, you convince them to join your side, and you can now play as them. The whole build up is to try and figure out who the villain is that is mind controlling all of Spider-Man's arch nemesis, and it paid off to me. Obviously, I didn't really play the game for its story. I just found it really cool how you can play as Spider-Man and have one of his villains by his side along the way. I thought it was pretty kick-ass. Each character has their own sets of abilities, and each one of them is pretty faithful to the character, but I don't understand why the Green Golem doesn't fly around with his hang glider. It doesn't really matter which character you play as, because they all essentially are leveled out the same. Not one is stronger than the other. Except for Spider-Man, of course. But why would you not want to play as Spider-Man? He's the whole reason why I bought this game in the first place. So just set your CPU friend as some random and just have at it. The only problem I found with this game back then was if I was playing this game with somebody else, which one of us gets to play as Spider-Man? If I was a poor one that got sucked into playing as somebody else, I'll probably play as Black Cat. At least she had some of the same movesets as Spider-Man with the grappling hook. There's also this leveling system, so you can level up each character, and each time they level up you get to increase something about that specific character. But of course the game developers only really cared about Spider-Man as he goes into the most depth with his character progression. He gets whole new web abilities for crying out loud. On the field of battle you come across these crystals that do something to your character. One increases your strength and the other increases your speed, which I never use. I found them kind of pointless since the game on its own is really easy. But there's one other crystal, the blue crystal, that gives your characters a finishing move, and what this move does, it just wipes the entire screen clean of enemies. When you activate this finishing move, you get this cutscene that relates to what characters you're playing as. Part of the fun for me growing up with this game was just trying out every character just to see what the cutscene looked like. Looking back at this game now, I see that these cutscenes are real stupid and make no sense. Like for example, why is Venom and Spider-Man just Venom screaming at the ground while Spider-Man blocks his mouth or ears or something, and the new and Green Goblin's ones are exactly the same thing. Alright, so let's now talk about the villains, you know, the ones that you're beating up the entire game. All the enemies are holograms, and this already gives me Spider-Man Far From Home vibes. So at this point it's kind of obvious who the main baddie is at the end of the game. But anyway, whoever he is has decided to combine his holograms to symbiotes, because you just gotta have a Spider-Man game with a symbiote in it. All the villains, however, are very generic. You have ones that move fast but are pretty easy to beat as they are weak themselves. Then you have these bigger and bulkier ones which are of course slow, but do deliver some powerful blows. Keeping with the hologram theme, each villain has this moment of weakness where once in this state you can knock them out with this powerful finishing move. All the villains are just really easy to beat, and the smaller ones you can pick up and hurl towards other enemies. This is how I find myself playing the game the most, just grabbing hold of the smaller weaker enemies and throwing them at other ones. The enemies play out the exact same way throughout the game, but they do change in physical appearance depending on what level you're playing at. So right here I'm playing some kind of spooky level, so all the enemies look like zombies. Every level has its fair share of these light mini bosses, and I call them mini bosses because they're actually more difficult to kill than all the other ones. And they have a health bar. Wow, these guys mean business. So what you gotta do in these ones is pick up items and throw it at them in their moment of weakness, which is normally when they're recharging up because it's a typical gaming thing. I always found it real stupid how the creatures themselves shoot out these smaller robots which you can throw right back at them. It's like going into a bank to rob it with a fake gun, only for the cashier guy to give you a real gun. Again, not a very good comparison, but it's that level of stupidityness. In between levels, you are forced to go back to the helicarrier, and this is where you select your characters, upgrades, and select the next level. So the game does try and offer some replay value by making it easier for you to select which level you go to. And let's face it, I played this game for hours on end because I had nothing better to do. Looking back, I had no idea what I was thinking. The level with Venom is the only unique level in the entire game. To defeat Venom, you gotta ring these bells, but sometimes he will shoot web at the bells, so you have to try and beat the web off the bell so you can ring it. Because, you know, he's like allergic to sound. It's also kinda cool how the level is a bit of a chase scene. He jumps from one building to a building, which all happen to have bells in it. Why would you go into a room that has your greatest weakness in it? It's like if Superman was to go into a room full of kryptonite only to be surprised that he's dying. Once you defeat Venom, he gives you the hints that the big bad guy has a bubble for a head. Apparently he was the only one that remembers anything about who kidnapped him and tried to mind control him.
The last thing I remember was a man with a bubble for a head.
The big bad guy is a bubblehead?
Okay, so you tell me the culprit looked a bit like that? The final levels have you in these ancient caves, and as if it wasn't already obvious to you, the main boss is revealed to be Mysterio. Yeah, after seeing Spider-Man Far From Home, it's kind of obvious who the main bad guy is. After all, his minions are holograms. Spider-Man then puts his life on the line and activates the symbiote and turns into the black suited Spider-Man. This scene gave me the chills back then. Oh boy, Spider-Man's going full villain. After some running around in the snowy mountains, you then go off to the final boss, yep, Mysterio. And just like the rest of the bosses, he is very, very easy to beat. Just dodge his lasers and chuck things at him, and the next thing you know, it's over. The game then ends with Nick Fury teasing at a possible sequel, which of course never happened.
What should I name the project file?
Considering the mess these things have made, Carnage. Call it Project Carnage.
Affirmative. Project Carnage initiated.
And there you have it, folks. That was Spider-Man Friend or Foe. Yeah, the game is nothing nowadays. It's, as I said, mediocre at best, but the game will always have a special place in my heart for being the game that spawned my love for gaming as a whole. One thing that really annoyed me then and still does today is how come when you finish the game for the first time, you unlock New Goblin at the very end. I thought he was in the opening cutscene to actually help you out. It's probably also worth noting that if you play the game on PSP, you can unlock Carnage in the game, which, yeah, you can't do here, so wow, okay. There's also a multiplayer in this game, which I didn't even know existed until I did this review, and it's just pretty much you versus your friend. A battle mode. It's a shame that nowadays a lot of these gaming companies are charging us gamers real money for the ability to unlock or play as a certain character. Like, remember when EA was charging you to play as Darth Vader? That's criminal. Alright guys, I don't want to give this game too much shit. This game did start off my gaming career, and to be honest, without it, I don't know if I would be the gamer I am today. So anyway, enough cheesy shit. Let's put this game to rest and, I don't know, move on to other games.